welcome back to this week's episode of The Action Effect, where I got to sit down with the lovely Sally Haslewood, who's the founder and MD of the Mumbler Group. Now, the reason for getting Sally onto The Action Effect is I feel like her story is so relatable and will resonate so highly with a ton of parents out there. Reason being is that several years ago, whilst pregnant with her second child, Sally started to do the maths around childcare costs for 2 children and whether it was worth balancing a corporate/civil service career with paying double childcare. And she came to the conclusion that it simply wasn't. So what started out as an innocent Facebook group several years ago has now progressed into 19 hyper-local family-friendly websites that are designed to throw a ton of information at families to help them make their lives with little people easier. Sally is now an employer, she's an entrepreneur, she's a local legend, to be completely honest. So it was an absolute thrill to have her on The Action Effect to hear about the inspiration behind the Mumbler Group. So if you're a parent at a career crossroads, I really suggest you take a listen to this. So let's dive into my conversation with the marvellous and wonderful Sally Haslewood of Mumbler. Good morning, Sally Haslewood. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you, Judy? Nice to speak to you.
Yeah, and you. And thank you for sparing some time out of your very busy Mumbler schedule to come and chat on The Action Effect. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Jill, this is actually my first time doing an online podcast, so I'm looking forward to seeing how this goes. Yeah.
Oh, welcome. Well, I'd say I was a season pro, but this is only my fourth. So, welcome. Or fourth hosting, I would say. So, But as we've chatted about before, the whole point of The Action Effect is to get some practical tips for people who are looking to change up their lives, whether that be routine, business, lifestyle, whatever. And I think it's fair to say the whole Mumbler empire that you've created falls into exactly that category. And the reason I'm super happy to be talking to you as well is that I feel like your position of switching up your work and career completely, catalyst being pregnancy, is hugely relatable to so many people. So I think it'd be great to hear a bit about civil servant life and what was it just pregnancy was the catalyst, or was it actually the work itself? How do you even think of creating Mumbler? And then the rest will be history. So how does that sound?
That's fantastic. Yeah, really
Nice
good.
one.
It's interesting, even as you're saying that, my mind's already going on because from a completely separate angle, that my catalyst was pregnancy, you're absolutely right. But that pregnancy is now 16 years old and she's doing her GCSEs. And I think kids these days are so focused on, as we were, what you're going to do, what do you want to be when you grow up, what GCSEs are going to do, what A-levels are going to do, are you going to go to uni, for this career? And yet these days, like, a career for life is so unlikely to happen. And the frightening thing, and obviously with the industry that you're in, and obviously the industry that Mumbler is, which is an online business, our businesses didn't exist when we were at school. So the thought of actually having some sort of career plan and seeing where you're going to go with it. So I'm all about the pivot. So that's exactly what I did 13 years ago now. I went from one career, which was a civil servant. Well, I was a chartered surveyor working in the civil service for the valuation office, and now I'm a website. I'd say guru. Do any of us really know what we're doing? Mumbler's an online parenting community, and ultimately we raise revenue by selling advertising. So I'm in the digital advertising space.
Nice. Love that. And I love that you say, it's just a digital advertising. It's not just digital advertising. You created a Mumbler empire that inspires mums who are looking to be able to have a career on the side of motherhood, which is just, motherhood being that tiny little life event that might occur. So it's quite a big thing. So first of all, talk me through your experience of that catalyst of needing/wanting to pivot from civil servant to Mumbler, and then we can go into the actual things that, looking back, what would you say to other mums who are in that position now? So let's go for your stuff first.
So from my personal point of view, throughout A-levels and then on to university. I say I knew what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I remember taking the prospectus home to my mum because I decided I wanted to go to this specific university because there was a band on, you know, that I wanted to called Top Loader.
Top Loader.
I know, the Dance in the Moonlight. So I decided I wanted to go to the university on that basis. Took the prospectus home to my mum and was like, right, what am I going to do? And I gave it to her because I honestly didn't have a clue who does at 18. And she was like, this one, chartered, well, it was retail, what was it? Real estate management was the course title.
Right.
It was to become a chartered surveyor. So I was reading through it. I've always been interested in property and houses, so it made sense. I thought, yeah, sounds like a laugh. I'll do that. I didn't actually know what a chartered surveyor was when I started my degree course to become one. But anyway, went 3 years on that and did well with it. It did fit in with my my own skill set. So then went on the path to become a chartered surveyor, which was another 2 years to qualify, pass a professional qualification. And fortunately, I did that with a valuation office. So I went into that job, and I was very happy there. I loved it. Enjoyed the role. And in the meantime, personal circumstances changed. I met my now husband. He was in the military. We ended up getting engaged and he then got posted to Germany. And this is one of the things at the time, again, you don't look this far, I certainly didn't look this far ahead, but I was quite fortunate being a civil servant and there was a bit more flexibility around taking career gaps because he gets posted to Germany for 2 years and I've got the option of either staying in the UK or, you know, accompanying him on the tour of duty. So that's what I ended up doing. And I was very fortunate that and I think by that point I was, you know, getting on in my career. I was still really young, but I'd proven myself, is what I mean.
Tender age of 30,
they knew that I could do the job, and that was I was worth holding the space open for. I was grateful for that. So that worked out really well. And then eventually, when he left the military, we came back to the UK, lived in the south, and again a few more years, bumbled along, and everything was great. Then I had my first daughter. And, you know, it does change everything. And I think before you go into parenthood, you have this idea that it's not and that you'll just be able to carry on a life as normal with a baby in a car seat underneath the pub table. And, you know, life doesn't go on like that. And from a professional point of view, things changed for me. And I had a great childcare. I think we had a really good nursery nearby. So I decided to go, after I'd had my first maternity leave, I did like my job. So I went back 3 days a week, which worked from a financial point of view and from a, family point of view. Yeah. And, that was fine, as long as everything was all right with the family. The problem was if the kid, my darling daughter, was poorly, or something went wrong with my husband's career because he was doing mega commutes at that point, or me, because I was a surveyor, there was times when I was in tribunals and the hours were erratic and, it was a professional job. It wasn't just, it wasn't a job that I could just drop if I was in the middle of something. I had to stay until the job was done. Yeah. And then I got pregnant with my second daughter, and we sort of made the decision at this point, because we lived in the south of England, we had no family support whatsoever, to move back up north, because my husband was from the north as well, and my family was still in the north, just to get that, it takes a village, and it's so true, to get that family support so that if things did go wrong, we had people to call on. And again, the valuation offers are brilliant for me because they agreed to transfer my role. So I was in Reading in Berkshire at the time, but there was an office in Harrogate, which is my hometown. Yeah. So they moved us back. They said they would transfer us to Harrogate. So at the end of my second maternity leave, I'd be returning to the Harrogate office. The problem was, while I was off on maternity leave, the Harrogate office closed. No. So at that point, my options were either Leeds or York, which was still doable. But the bottom line, and this is what my major catalyst was, I did the sums on what it would cost for me to put two preschool-aged children in childcare for 3 days a week, and me go to work, and the difference between me working and not working was £400 a month. And I was like, £400 a month, I needed to earn it. We had, we were, each month we had no money left over, probably living beyond our means, so I needed to earn it. But I thought there's other ways to earn £400 a month rather than in a really high pressure job where I'd be commuting probably 2 hours a day, dropping the kids off at nursery from the minute it opened, and then having that stress of whether or not I'm going to be back in time for closing, or whether or not I'm going to get told off by the nursery, and just not feeling like I was doing right by anybody, doing half a job at work, half a job at mumming, and my husband and I were like ships passing in the night. So that was the bottom line for me, was £400 a month was my catalyst.
I think that's such a relatable thing because, you know me, I don't have kids apart from my four-legged one, but having spoken, But so many of my friends are at that kind of life stage where, especially when you have the second and you're outlaying on childcare, doing those sums of corporate plus nursery or not at all
Yeah,
is insanity. Like
yeah,
the cost is incredible when you boil it down to that, where, you know, like 400 quid a month, £100 a week, divide that by the day. It's like,
yeah,
what do I need to do to just make
yeah,
whatever that is?
yeah.
I don't
20
know,
quid a
20 quid
day.
a day. Yeah,
20 quid a
exactly. Which
working
is
day.
nuts.
Yeah.
And
And
it's
then plus
not,
on top of that, I would have had the commuting cost. You know, you end up buying a sandwich when you're out for lunch,
yeah,
you know, at home. I was just like, yeah, it's cost neutral. So I just wasn't, that was the bottom line for me. I was like, there's got to be an easier way. And at the same time, I'd sort of, Mumbler was never, and I could never pretend that it was a strategy. It was very much an accidental, organic business, and still is to this day. But when I'd returned to North on maternity leave, I'd set up this little Facebook group just so that I could find my tribe, find out what was going on locally, find
yeah,
places to go, make friends. Is the bottom line. I was lonely. I
yeah,
didn't have a support network. Whilst I knew Harrogate well, I was from here. A lot of my friends, as is the case, had moved away to go to university. They were coming back drip feed, but I needed to find people with kids the same age. So I'd set up this little Facebook group, just keep me out of trouble and find out what was going on. And it sort of started to grow. And
yeah.
at the same point I was coming towards the end of my maternity leave, this group was getting bigger and bigger. And Facebook groups were quite new then. So this is 2011. You know, they've been around. People knew what was what, but they weren't as established as they are now. And we'd create this lovely little online community where people were really sharing information. It was, it's only the same as any sort of marketing, but it was like modern word of mouth marketing. There was the recommendations that coming from people of other local businesses who was good. And it was on the back of that, I thought, didn't really take a genius when I had this massive group of people, probably about 1,000 local parents at that point. And then I was having businesses who were getting recommendations, and I was actually getting contacted by businesses saying, we want to work with you. We want to do some more with you. We've had some good recommendations. How can we advertise with you? So I was like, it's taken me a little while, but I was like, oh, I've got people who want to pay me, and I've got an audience. Maybe there's a business in here. And that was the start of how I took a Mumbler off social. Well, it's still on social media, but I took it away from social media as well, and started to actually look at it as a serious way of earning my £400 a month.
Nice. I love that. I think that there's loads of key stuff in there, and the first one being, I would imagine, I can't relate obviously from a mum perspective, but from a career pivot, working out what's worth it, from whether it be mum balance or just life balance and enjoyment of work, is someone who's in that point of overwhelm of, is it worth commuting? Is it worth doing this? Is it worth the money, etc.? Before you even jump into something else, it's like, how can I break this down to work out whether I need to change and what I need to change? So as an initial tip, I think that just take it a very base level of doing the sums is like that's just such a really nice doable little step in the great big ecosystem of what could be overwhelm of motherhood and career life to go, and you don't know where to look because it's like, oh God, I'm stuck in the commute. By the time I got home with the kids, I'm doing it again. And you just, to get you out of that rumination of overwhelm, take it back and go, right, what are the sums? So is that kind of, would you say that would be the very
that
first
was
step
without doubt my driver. And also, and as much as it's hard to do, it's looking at that stage where you can cut costs, because there are, a lot. And I think maybe during lockdown, most of us experienced this because we did cut out the holidays because we couldn't do it. There was, cutting out on the social life. I think for me personally, my social life, that happened naturally. I know, because I had 2 kids, like we had no social life, and we had no money to have a social life anyway. But also when I think back, for me, and I appreciate, I'm very lucky to be able to do this because my husband was still earning, so I didn't have to take the entire financial burden for the family on me. But I did need to chip in. But there was other side hustles as well. And sometimes I think, 13 years later, I forget about it. We took in students at the time, so we needed to make some money. So international students, we had a spare bedroom that we put in there. Gosh, things went wrong. It was not always plain sailing, but it made a bit of money. I did, when Jamie Oliver at home parties were a thing, I did those back in the day. Bit of it's like a modern Tupperware party. It was something that I could do around the kids. So, when Dave was home on an evening, that's my husband, I could go out and do, basically party planning for a couple of hours and sell some Tupperware.
Nice.
And, I did what I had to do to make the money, but all of this wasn't, this wasn't a career plan. This was just the side hustles to make it work. But I think the good thing with the digital age now is there's lots of things that you can do and dip your toe in the water. You don't have to go all in. You don't have to be quitting your day job.
Yeah.
That you can try out. Because I do fundamentally believe if you're passionate about something, you get good at it. And if you're good at it, someone will pay you to do it.
Yeah.
And you don't have to go, and I know some people have got a bigger appetite for risk than me. I would say I'm naturally quite cautious, but there are many opportunities these days where you can give it a go before you fully, I'd say go balls deep, but
Yeah, yeah, you could say that. That's I mean, not that either we can relate, but I know what you mean, boobs deep. Yeah. No, I think that's, and when you whittle it down to something like 400 quid a month, that all of a sudden becomes doable in someone's brain. Like you don't have to all of a sudden find something that's going to replace, a 40, 50, 60, 70 grand a year corporate career and relearn everything in your life. And it's 20 quid a day. What can I do? What have I got in the cupboard that I could sell or upsell or recycle or whatever for 20 quid a day? And that's that month done.
Yeah.
So
totally. And I think you're absolutely right. It's making it bite sized. If you look at anything as a big overwhelm. And for me, hand on heart, it took me years so when you're a chartered surveyor, you pay money to an organisation, the RICS, every year with your, I forget what the proper word is, like your enrolment.
Yeah.
And it was reduced because I was off on maternity leave, so it wasn't a great deal. It was, I don't know, I can't remember what the money was. It was like 100 quid a year or something to keep your registration. Probably took me about 5 years to stop paying that because there was a lot in my mind, if I'm honest with myself, attached to the status of having letters after my name. And prior to being off with the kids, that yes, this is what I am. I'm a chartered surveyor. I've got letters after my name, and it was evidence of my hard work for the years, and and it took a lot to stop doing that. And when I look back now, I think, so how ridiculous, but at the time it was a big deal.
Yeah. And I guess it's a real, one of these first steps to making that pivot is actually having a real hard think about what's important.
Yeah. Like, what is your why?
Yeah, exactly. And was there a light bulb moment for you where it was like, yeah, these chartered surveyor letters mean naffle, and actually I just want to make some money and enjoy my family time and all of that stuff?
Yeah, I think one of the things was before I left, when I was fairly heavily pregnant with my second daughter, I remember being in a tribunal, and it was basically a dispute over the amount of business rates and business should pay. And obviously for the person involved, and they were talking, I think it was on a like a big retail warehouse, so it was big amounts of money that they're talking about. Their business rates were a fortune, and it was my job to argue the case for the valuation office for the valuation we put on. I remember sitting there heavily pregnant, and my stomach was like literally moving because I was getting kicked, and I'm sitting there like having to, or pretending that I'm ignoring this and just thinking, what am I doing? I don't actually care, is the honest. And I'm here, supposing doing this job, and I understand why the other side, they put a lot of money behind their, their surveyors to make sure they get the right outcome. And I'm doing a job that the passion's gone.
Yeah.
And that was that was one of the first things for me. And maybe that's just because I was heavily pregnant about the hormones. But I do remember that and just thinking, I'm done with this. But also for me, I think if I look within myself with my why, money's not my driver. And don't get me wrong, I've got to earn a living. I can't be doing this for free. But honestly, for me, it's not. There's so many other things that I take from Mumbler and from the communities that we've created and the business that I've created and the people that I work with that come up on that list above what I'm taking home each month, which is probably why I'm not ready to sell the business and retire yet. But, the money's not the number one for me.
I don't think it can be if you choose to run your own business. Like, it's literally, I love it. There's such a misguided, painted picture of what it is to, run your own business and earn loads of cash. It's like, I wouldn't have bothered. No. If cash was my big driver, I would not be running my own business, that's for sure.
And that was also something. So with Mumbler, it originally started in Harrogate, as I've alluded to, but I have expanded it over the years.
Yeah.
And now we've got 19 territories. I've got 6 staff, 14 franchisees. And I still have that thought sometimes, should I have expanded? Because when it was just me running Harrogate Mumbler, I earned a nice living, very little stress in my life, no employees. I still, with the balance as it is, I'm still glad that I did it, but it's not without its thoughts. And I do think I could have been more conscious about that when I expanded.
Yeah.
It takes you away from the coalface. It takes you away from doing the thing that you love, hopefully the thing that you love. And your role changes considerably when you start taking on staff and when you start growing. And I probably did know this and probably ignored it at the time. And probably anyone who's listening to this now will probably ignore it too. But I definitely think that's a point where you should give in conscious thought of, is this what I really want? Is growth the answer for me?
Yeah.
Because it's not necessarily the right thing for all. It changes everything.
No, I agree. And actually, there's a really nice couple of segues in there, because the first one is, we've like leapfrogged from Facebook group to 19 and there's a little bit of filling in that we need to do
in the middle, yeah.
But there's also the bit that I think we should touch on after that, which is that, because we have this kind of conversation with freelancers all the time who are on that trajectory of having enough work for themselves, so should they pivot into like running an agency? And for you, it's really similar. Like, you had that, self-sufficient, really nice, like, lifestyle business. Yeah. At what point do you then make that conscious decision to go, I'm going to not sack off the lifestyle business, but I'm going to take that pivot and I'm going to run a business, as opposed to, say, a freelance one-man band that's doing really, really well?
Yeah.
So let's go through a few of the steps in between Facebook group to like empire. So what actually did that look like, and talk us through the process?
So for me, it was 2012 when I started the Facebook group in 2011. 2012, I made the decision to take it onto its own website. So I bought the domain, found a local web developer. So there was a small investment at the time. At the time, it didn't feel small because it was in the thousands, but we were managed to do it in-house. It was self-funded to build the first website. And it was a £400 a month business plan. I think I actually probably upped it to maybe about £600. I wanted to pay back the website in a number of months. And it went really well. So I made advertising revenue from day one.
Nice.
And the business was there. I just needed to facilitate it almost. It was great. Profitable from day one. And I think it took me about 3 months to cover the cost of building the website. And from that point, my own costs were fairly minimal. Worked from home, worked from my kitchen table. And a lot of the role, because Mumbler is about information for local families, I was out and about with my kids doing the research. So it really fit in with my life at that point. And because the kids were so little, it was a baby and a toddler, I did it on nap times and on the night. And fortunately, I was quite a night owl anyway, so I ran the business around their schedule, which when I look back now, I don't know how I did it, but I did it. And it went really well. And the business then, again, it was organic growth. So there was two things that happened almost simultaneously. First of all, my sister, who lived in York, I think she must have been pregnant with her second child about a year after I had Eva. So thought she'll set up a similar Facebook group. She was still working in corporate at that point, so set up York Mumbler Facebook group. And at the same time, an ex-colleague of hers was wanting out of the professional market. She was a marketeer working for a big food company in Hull. So my sister put us two together and said, look, do you think what you've done in Harrogate would be something that we could replicate elsewhere? And would you like to give it a try in Hull? I met this lady called Rachel. She was brilliant, got on very well with her. And I thought, you know what, this is the opportunity to give it a go. Because at that point, I didn't know if it was just me that was special or whether or not it was the business. And it wasn't me at all. It was the business. But I told Rachel everything I knew. And we got her set up and going on Hull Mumbler. And she's still going now. So she's nearly as old as I am in Mumbler terms, and brilliant. I'm so pleased. She was a great sort of first try. And by this point, York Mumbler was ready to come off social media and onto its own website. So that was the next one. So I had these two sort of test franchises, if you like. And again, because I know I'm not very open to risk, it was nice for me to do it with, sister and then friend of a friend, keeping it nice and gentle, not expecting them to put the hand in the pocket. I mean, they were putting in time and effort, don't get me wrong. They put in, blood, sweat and tears, but I didn't expect the initial financial outlay from them until I knew it was deliverable. And that worked really well. So for a couple of years, we ran that. And I think it must have been around 2015, 16. I sort of thought, we're ready now to do this properly, franchise properly. So I ended up employing a franchise consultant. I managed to get a little bit of match funding from one of the I think it was the LEP at the time, or one of the European funds, I can't remember.
Yeah.
But we managed to get the 50% funding, which was actually
Amazing.
very valuable, because we were starting to spend tens of thousands of pounds getting ready to become a proper franchised organisation. I mean, as with all these things, you don't know what you don't know when you go into it, but you need a proper franchise agreement, you need a prospectus, you need the operations manual.
Yeah.
I needed to franchise trademark the name before I franchised it. All sorts of these things, and inevitably the costs add up. And get some expertise at that point, because whilst I knew Mumbler inside out and I trusted my instincts on Mumbler, I had no idea what franchising was all about.
Yeah.
We did that, and then started advertising the opportunity a bit wider, and it was at that point I really started taking on other franchises, selling them on a 5-year term initially. And I think at one point we got up to many 25.
Nice.
But over the course of the last 10 years, obviously it's a 5-year franchise, so some of them have just ended and not renewed for whatever reason. Some of them haven't worked out. Obviously we had COVID right in the middle, which was a challenge. So that's the stage we're at now. And
nice.
We did have another fairly major pivot during COVID, actually, because COVID affected all businesses, and it was terrifying. And when I look back now, I think I probably look at it with a bit of rose-tinted specs, but it was terrifying, because a lot of our income, the vast majority of income on Mumbler, is businesses that obviously want to advertise to families. So it'd be visitor attractions and classroom groups, and they all closed overnight. And then even when they did reopen, as lockdowns were starting to open, they didn't want full capacity because they were limited on numbers, and social distancing was still a thing. So we lost a lot of advertisers for a long time. And it was at that point, I think, because I'd matured a lot as a business person, I felt a lot more comfortable taking on staff. So I had a fairly major pivot at that point, because up until that point, my only expansion had been through selling franchises. And there'd been a lot of learnings along the way, the franchises that hadn't worked out for various reasons. And I actually felt a lot more comfortable as a business person by this point. So I thought, maybe now's the time to employ some staff and do a bit more of a traditional structure in conjunction with the franchise model. And that's where we are now. So we've got 4 HQ sites that we're running ourselves, and the rest of them are run by franchises. So
I see. So when you say like the traditional model with the franchises, you're actually effectively keeping those and spotting the areas, and you think, we'll have those ones for HQ, but we're also franchising out other rooms.
That's it. Nice. And it works particularly well where I've had a franchisee who's left, and normally traditionally I would have resold it to somebody else, but actually I'm bringing it in-house now, putting a member of paid employee on the ground, a sales team in Harrogate, who are running the sales remotely. I mean, they'll go on location when required, but predominantly because it's digital, we can do a lot of it remotely. So that's where we are now. But as I say, more employees brings other challenges.
More people, more problems.
So what's the space? We'll see.
Nice. I think that's an absolute pitch perfect example of how you can pivot when you're the owner manager as well, because you haven't got investors breathing down your neck, you haven't got anyone else really to answer to. So because you've got complete autonomy, you can go, actually, I know exactly how to do this, so I'll just do it myself, as opposed to sell it and train someone else up to do it. So when you're going through that process of keeping it in-house versus franchising, do you have a checkbox of things that you look at in terms of forecasting potential or whatever, or do you just hit and hope because you know what you're doing?
I'd say probably the latter, but the ones that we're running in-house have been because something has happened sort of beyond our control. So we had a franchisee who left through ill health. It was never when I was expecting to get back, but I did. But it's a great opportunity, so I've had to, make it work. But it was never, it was not on my bingo card for last year to get this particular one back. But life throws up these challenges. And like you were saying about the having the autonomy to make those decisions, you're absolutely right, and it is brilliant, and I think it suits my personality. I'm probably fairly unemployable / unworkable these days, but I'm also free to get it wrong, and I do sometimes. And again, you don't know what you don't know. So there's been times when I've made decisions, and you learn painfully when it's your own business. Ultimately, it hits you in the pocket, or you damages your business, or both. Where potentially if there was outside expertise, potentially I could have learned quicker. So I think possibly for the future, I would be open to investment. Up until this point, we've never done it.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely at the stage where if I do want to expand Mumbler as big as I think it could be, so we've got 19 locations across the UK now, but there's no reason why we couldn't have a Mumbler in every reasonably sized town.
Yeah.
But I will need investment and expertise there, because I'm not, I'm not the only one who'd need to be at the helm there to make that happen. So
yeah, but that's only another natural kind of decision segue, isn't it? It's exactly the same feeling as, do you go from lifestyle business to, out of the Facebook group into the website? It's only another, like, do I go, and it's not even necessarily up. It's like, do I want to go sideways into that? And it's similar decision, different stage of life/business, isn't it?
Yeah. And one of the things you've mentioned, and I would still say Mumbler is a lifestyle business, because that fits in with my why of, it wouldn't suit me even now to be at work, from 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. Like, I just wouldn't, I'm very fortunate because I do still have a relatively young family that my business fits in around them. I can be flexible. And don't get me wrong, it's not the case that they always get my priority. They don't at all. Sometimes Mumbler is ahead, but I've got that flexibility that I can do it. But I think traditionally we've always thought lifestyle business has been kind of a negative connotation, but I honestly don't think it is. For me, being able to have a business and a career that I love, I know I'm one of the lucky ones. And yes, sometimes it is absolutely all consuming. There's no doubt about it. But equally, it can fit in with what I'm doing. I never feel really like it's running me. I'm still running it, and it's fitting in around with me. And as I say, I'm one of the lucky ones because I get to earn a living from my passion. So
you say lucky. I mean, that's graft, and it's creating your own luck. But you've created something around your lifestyle that you happen to really love as well.
Yeah, so, and I'm incredibly proud of it. And and in no small part, yes, don't get me wrong, it was my idea and my graft in the early days, but the team that I've put together, I am incredibly lucky to have this business now where, and don't get me wrong, they all deserve to be paid more than they do, and I put myself in that category as well. But as I say, it's not our major driver. We're running this business that it does well, and particularly some of the franchises do incredibly well financially, but these people who have chosen to dip out of the corporate world, and I think pretty much all of them have, for one reason or another, because it didn't fit in with their life choices anymore. And that, one of the things I love is that that's okay now. And I think maybe in no small part, COVID's changed that sort of being able to work from home, having more flexibility, lack of presenteeism. I mean, don't get me wrong, I know it's still there in some businesses, but not having to wear a suit, I don't have to wear a suit anymore. And even if I do have an important business meeting with people that I want to impress, I can dress smartly and still do things. But there's no expectation to pretend to be something that we're not. And I love that.
Yeah, and also having, I don't know if you feel the same, but I think the older we get and the more we do this ourselves, the more confidence we have just to say, nah, I'm all right, thanks.
Yeah.
Like, if it doesn't align to what you want to do, and it could make you probably a bit more cash, but actually it's too much like hard work and it doesn't fit with what I want to do. It's just like, nah, I'm all right.
Yeah, absolutely. And even aside from whether or not you want to do the work or not, it's that core values of your company and having that confidence. And you're right, it's definitely taken me to mature in business to have that confidence, say, no, I don't want to work with you. And it's all fine and well when I've got some actual good, tangible reason, if I can research and find something out. But sometimes it's just on gut feeling and experience, thinking, do you know what? I've worked so hard to build this company's reputation. And it could be destroyed in an instance if I partner with somebody that doesn't align with my values, or somebody that doesn't fit in with our ethos, or and again, I think the rest of the world is catching up with that. I think it's actual, and I mean proper company values, not just when you see a corporate with their on the website their company values that no one actually knows or believes in, but just that knowing this is what I believe in, and if your company isn't aligned with that, we don't need to do business, and that's fine. People can behave differently and run their businesses differently, but I need to be working with people that believe in, and
definitely. And I think as you progress through business life, I think the gut feel is absolutely, you nailed it when you said that, because I think there's also that has come with negative connotations in business as well, but it's so important.
Yeah.
Like if you you could put a load of work into working with someone. Like in the early days, I would say yes to everything, because you just have to, don't you?
Yeah,
You
you
kind
need
of
to
have
make,
to get an idea of
yeah,
what that is going to do and work. Will it work? But as you carve out the Mumbler niche, and as you carve out who you're helping and what problems you're solving, that gut feel will take Mumbler naturally in the right direction, I
yeah,
think. And you have more of a confidence to be able to follow your gut as opposed to just test and learn constantly.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Nice. I think there's loads of stuff as well with Mumbler that helps contradict some of the ridiculousness you hear online about business, which I love as well. You see, so like we talked about before the call, there's all this ridiculousness around kind of building business and how easy it is, no experience, 6 figures, 6 months, no experience, all of this stuff. And it needs to be shiny and innovative and, some kind of AI driven platform or whatever it might be. But actually what you've done with Mumbler is solve a local problem for everyday people really well.
Yeah,
And I think that and especially, it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts for your kids as well, because I feel like there's so much pressure on people when they go to start or think they want to start their business, that it has to be really shiny, really new, really, as I said, innovative, like really fancy bells and whistles. But actually, there's so many problems that need solving at such a local level, at
yeah,
such a straightforward level. And if they're done really well, they expand into something enormous because they work and because they do a really good job.
yeah.
And Mumble is exactly that. So what's your kind of thoughts on that side of it?
Yeah, I think for me personally, when I was running it as a Facebook group, I was finding this information for myself. I just needed to know what was going on. So it made absolute sense for me that if I'm looking for this, other people are going to be looking for this.
Yeah.
So that was my sort of light bulb moment. And it made no sense for me that, the 1,000 people in my Facebook group were all looking to find out what was on this weekend. So I'll do it. I'll
Yeah.
give them the information. So I think that's a key thing. It's what your customer wants. And
Yeah.
always at the front of your mind. And even now I sometimes forget this. It's not about it's what's their problem,
Yeah.
what is their little pain point, and what can you solve, how can you solve it, how can you either do it better, quicker, with a better relationship. There's so many different angles. It might be cheaper, some people do want to do it cheaper, some want to do it more fancy, whatever your angle is almost neither here nor there, but it's what's their problem and how can you solve it.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, we're all humans. We're all, I'd say, selfish. That makes it sound worse. It's all about us. So
Yeah.
even now, my business ultimately is sales. It's not going in and telling people what I can do for them. It's listening to their problem and then offering them a solution to their problem. That's it. It's fundamental basis. But yeah, I think it's those pain points. It's recognizing what's out there as a pain point and trying it and being willing to change it. You can have an idea, and ideas are great. Don't get me wrong, everyone needs an idea if they're going to start a business. But an idea, it's the grunt work, it's the hard work behind the idea that makes it happen. I always think these people have come up with like an invention or whatever, and you think, oh, brilliant, yeah. But how many of those have gone by the wayside because they haven't had someone behind them giving it the horsepower, being there when no one else is going to turn up, slogging it out, putting in the grunt work. So pain points and hard work.
Yeah, exactly. But also solving the pain points that you've solved with Mumbler from day one are going to be the same pain points that you continue to solve in 20 years' time.
Yeah.
Because mums aren't going anywhere.
Yeah.
The need to entertain toddlers and children is not ever going to go anywhere, as I'm sure you'll agree. So now that kind of what you've created is a really, I want to say basic sounds like a horrible word, but it's not like a negative. It's like a really simple model that is just brilliant.
Yeah.
Because it has that evergreen nature of it will always work.
Yeah.
Because mums aren't going anywhere, kids aren't going anywhere, businesses that cater for that group are not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So are you, in terms of the maturity of Mumbler, I know we've kind of gone from Facebook group to website to franchisees. What's next? Is it pure expansion? How can you better something that works so basically brilliantly well already?
Well, I think the way that we deliver our information is already changing. We've been around 13 years in Harrogate now. When we first started, half the social media platforms that are the most popular now didn't even exist.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So our method of delivery's changed. We've got to keep up with our audience, because while you're absolutely right, there'll always be parents, there'll always be kids. Where they hang out, for want of a better word, is
Yeah.
changing. So we always need to keep on top of that. But then also, I think for us, because when AI first started being a thing, it was all like, oh God, is it going to take over everything? But you're right in saying one of our absolute USPs in Mumbler is our local, and that we are a person in every town. It's a real life human being. Who has got that local knowledge, who understands their town, who understands the parents in their town. And that is, so in some ways, I think we're kind of going a little bit backwards, but deliberately, to remind people that we are not a faceless corporation with an AI bot who's scrolling the net to find the information. We're a real life person. So it's that constant trying to get our face out. So we found in a lot of instances, and again, post-COVID, we're going back to real life, in real life events, more face-to-face stuff. So whatever social media platform we're on, and our favourites still tend to be Instagram and Facebook, we're doing more person in front of camera, reminding people that we are not a bot, doing more real life meetups, more in real life meetings with people, which I think in the run up to COVID, people had embraced digital more and more, and we're happy to do a quick Teams call or whatever. Whereas I find personally, I don't know if you're the same, where possible, people are wanting to have a quick cup of coffee and have that human interaction and connection again. But keep on top of things like that to make sure that we stay relevant. But with regards to the future of Mumbler as it is, this is where I could pretend that I've got some big strategy and plan, but I absolutely don't, never have. As I said before, I think fundamentally the thing that gets me out of bed is not the money, it's the community that we're creating, and the fact that I would love for every parent in the UK and every carer of children in the UK to be able to benefit from Mumbler. So that ultimately leads, nationwide expansion. Quite how I'm going to get to there, I don't know. But I'm also a great believer in fate, and whatever's meant to be will present itself. Then it's up to me to make sure I grab the opportunity when it does.
Yeah, and as you were saying, the digital world enables you to get in front of more people a lot easier. So it's just reaffirming that message, and you've kind of got to that. You're way beyond test and learn, and you are now established, and it's like that. Right, it's not just maintenance. It's not like that sudden trajectory of growth and excitement that you get at the start of a business. It's like, right, how do we mature it and take it to the
and to do it consciously. I'm at a stage in my own life now where I have got a lot more time to give to the business, whereas 10 years ago I was still chasing toddlers around the kitchen. I've got a great team around me, so I'm definitely in a position where I can do it consciously now and thoughtfully, which suits me as a human. As I say,
but it takes you out of the business as well, because at the start you're the one in there updating the website, updating the Facebook group, and now you've got the wonderful Katie and everybody else working around you to offload some of that stuff too. So how have you found that as a business person? To kind of take that more of a out of the business and onto it? Have you got a mentor? Do you check? How have you done that?
I don't have a mentor now, and it's something that I have reflected on. Sometimes when I hear about businesses that started it with partnerships, so I feel a bit envious because
Tell me about it.
Land on my doorstep. It is me. I mean, I've got plenty of great support, personally with my husband. I'm within the business. But no, I don't. But it is something in the past that I have done. So I've been on incubator programs previously that have been really helpful. But I think with all of these things, the thing that I would take away from that is you've got to be in the right frame of mind to do it. You've got to be able to dictate. You've got to be able to give the amount of time that it is required. Because that's with all these things. It's what you put in is what you get out. I did one. I think it was a NatWest incubator before pre-COVID, which was brilliant, but it did take quite a lot of time. It was going, it was only across the Leeds, but it was each time it was a full day that I was doing it, plus the work that you put in behind the scenes. And it did come at a good time of my business. I took so much from it. There's others that have come across my desk in recent years where I thought, you know what, there's no point. Not only is there a cost involved with doing it, it's time out of the business. I'm not potentially in the right frame of mind to focus on growth mindset or whatever. So I do think they're brilliant, and I do think it's good to have an eye out to see what's out there as business support, and particularly female business support. I think it is different. There's different things, very broad brush that that women need potentially that men don't. But you've got to be in the right frame of mind in the right stage of the business to do it.
I completely agree, and it goes back to what you're saying about gut. as well, I think. Because I think when you get to, when you go through those natural stages of business progression from shiny object syndrome, it's really new, it's exciting, oh my God, I'm working for myself and not a corporate. And then you get into the, oh, test and learn. Yeah, okay, we're just getting a bit of traction. You know, when like those first few people start approaching you and you go, oh, hang on a second, there's something here. So let's mold that into a business. And then it's like maintenance stage. All of those natural kind of step ups come with another need for personal growth.
Yeah.
And whether that is managed by yourself or you need that external support, only you can decide. Would you agree with that kind of thing?
Yeah, definitely. Again, it's back to those pain points, isn't it? And I think obviously as a human, you've got your own characteristics and there's things that you'll naturally do well, things that you might struggle with. You know, for me now, you know, conflict is the dread, the thought. And you know, unfortunately, and I'm not even talking about conflict if someone's not paying the bill. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't like chasing money, but I'll do it. But you know, there's been instances where I've had to let people go from the business. Like that for me is worst case. But I'm aware that that is a weak point in me. And there's been things that I've done over the years to try and help combat that, and you know, giving me my own little toolkit mentally to. And for me, with that particular instance, in fact, it wasn't firing somebody; it was giving somebody some, you know, fairly heavy negative feedback. But the fact of the matter is, if I hadn't given that feedback, I wasn't doing right by them. You know, and I am ultimately probably at heart a people pleaser. So when I framed it like that, thinking if I don't tell this person this feedback, and it's going to be hard saying, it's going to be hard for them to listen, they're going to go and do it again. They're going to let themselves down. They're not going to reach the full potential. So actually, you know, sometimes I'm doing them a favour.
That iron fist is working well for them. It's nothing to do with me.
And you know, luckily, as I have had to let staff go, it's ultimately, it's a very difficult conversation to have. It's a difficult decision to, you know, and it will no doubt cause me sleepless nights. It still does, but it's for the greater good of the business and for the greater good of, you know, the other 19 people that work with me. So yes, it is going to be tough to do, but when I frame it like that for myself, it's, you know, I can get it done. Even if I don't enjoy
it. But it's that classic case, if you've got one bad apple, it sours the whole group, doesn't it? And it's on you to deal with that. And it's interesting actually it'd be good to get your thoughts, because from a similar perspective of being that solo female, in, you know, you've got to make those decisions as to what gaps do I have? Because I think one of the biggest things with, if you're going to take that route of first off working for yourself and then secondly developing as a business, you absolutely cannot think you're the finished article in any entity of life. So to have that self-reflection and go, and equally recognize that the bits you are good at, which is quite hard as well. So for instance, like I know the mentor that I work with now and again helps kind of categorize my thoughts, because I have 50 billion everywhere, and to get him just to help with those penny drop moments of, you know, like you were saying, to come to the realization that difficult conversation was actually good for them. You know, it's only that tiny shift in mindset which is huge for you as a business owner, and you will take that on for every single difficult conversation you have now. But working out whether you can get to that yourself or whether you need external support to help you in those kind of moments is a really tricky thing to work out in the first place, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think there's two things there. Number one, it's either external support and training for yourself, but also if you are adding to your team, it's finding the other team members that have got skills that will plug that gap. Because you can't be the best at everything. And you know, I'm not naive enough to think I am. I always used to have this little mantra. It's like, you do what you do best and then you outsource the rest. And I do hang my hat on that.
Nice. I'm going to add that to my sticker wall.
But it's so true. The problem is, going back to when you're a small business or a startup business, you know, bringing on staff has costs. And you get to the stage where, you know, you're about to explode because you're doing everything yourself. You're working all of the hours, from cleaning the loos to doing the biggest deals that you've got and everything in between. And something's got to give. And eventually you earn enough money so you can employ somebody else. And it's finding, you know, that skill, or even if it's a freelance role, which is what I did first. I took on freelancers. But it's, you know, you've got to go through that pain point first before you can afford them. But so my team now, I am definitely not a detailed person. I know that about myself. I'm very, you know, like you, I think I've got about 300 tabs open in my brain at any given point. I'm very distractible. I'm very good at procrastinating. But whilst I say, it sounds negative, I am excellent at getting whatever needs to be done that day. You know, inevitably when I've got a big team, my inbox I never know what I'm going to be dealing with today, and I can go from one task to another, move on, get the job done, get it done quickly. And because we're in digital, I don't want to belittle anyone else in digital, but I always think to myself, I'm not a book publisher here. It doesn't have to be perfect. It needs to be good enough, and it needs to be out there. And if needs be, we can tweak it later. So it's not about perfection in my role. It's about getting it done. And getting it done, well enough, but getting it out there, getting the message out there, and particularly on social media. But in doing that, I also need people on my team who are good at the detail. We're putting something out in print in one of the locations very soon, and I am not going to be the proofreader. I'm the one who'll get it there 80% and then hand it over to the person who I know is good at detail to look at it closely. So I think it's recognising those things, and as you say, either getting external training or getting somebody on your team who and then also giving them the autonomy to get on with it. I would hate to be, it's just not in my personality, but I'm not a micromanager, and hand in hand with that is accepting that they will not do it exactly the way that I would do it. But that's okay, and again, I can say this now when I think back to when I first started Mumbler, I did everything. I was a control freak. It was my baby. Every post that went out on social media, every piece of content on the website, every interaction with the customer was me. But if I'm going to grow a business, that's ridiculous to think that would be the case. And as with all things, as you go on, you get more comfortable letting other people get stuck in. And a lot of the time, they do it way better than I would. Great, I could take the credit for putting this amazing team together.
Well, I think that's part of the progression, isn't it? Because as soon as you unlock a new step in business, you go, why the hell did I not do that before? Because it seems so terrifying. But as soon as you offload that, even if it's a client call or, the reviewing of a document or the creation in your world of a few pieces of content for the first few that you've not done and someone else has done, that relief is just like, what have I been doing all this time? But you kind of have to go through that to get to that stage. And also by you doing everything, you do set a bar. And I totally agree that you can never expect, it was Gary Vee or someone who says, never expect anyone to give as much of a shit about your stuff as you do, which is totally true. But by doing it yourself, you set a level of expectation of, what can be achieved in X amount of time. So you start to kind of curate a job spec by accident, don't you? Because you go, well, I know on Monday I'm going to be doing this for the social or whatever it is. So by the time you're ready mentally and financially to onboard someone, you've probably got like 80% of a job spec already.
And Joe, I would say, whilst obviously Gary Vee does know what he's talking about, I would disagree with that. I think my people do care as much as I do.
Do you?
Yes.
God, lucky you.
I'm probably, particularly with some of the franchises, because they're bought into their own business. Yes, it's my branding, and yes, it's my original idea, but they're the ones who put the blood, sweat, and tears in. And I appreciate. I'm very lucky in this situation, but they live and breathe it as much as I do, and my own staff as well. Because as I say, it comes back to the fact that they probably could all be earning a lot more money if they'd stuck in the corporate lives, but they're actually now doing something that they care about and a job that they're proud of, and something, the amount of feedback that we get off people on the ground, that it really makes your day. Like if not your week, when you get. I wrote a blog recently, and I don't write much anymore, which is a shame because I love it actually. And every now and again, I will put pen to paper. Get out my quill,
finger to keyboard.
Keyboard. I'm still like two person keeping the type.
And 3 weeks later, you'll have a blog post.
But I put out a blog recently. It's a real personal one actually, which I just haven't done for a while. And the amount of messages that I got off people saying, "Oh, thank you for doing this. You've no idea. I didn't know anyone else was going through this." I had someone stop me in the supermarket the other day, Jenny, to like, "Oh my God, a stranger in the supermarket." I was like, I'm a teenager that was there, so she thought it was kind of cool.
Nice.
So that feedback that we get, and my entire team get it, and I sometimes hear it about my team from other areas, so I always try and feed that back and make sure that they know. But I appreciate that. I'm very lucky with that. The team behind me care about Mumbler as much as I do, which is, I'm very privileged.
I think that's what you've instilled within the franchisees, though, with Mumbler is part and parcel of that, because it sounds, on paper, it's like, oh, I'll buy into a business and then I can
Mm,
work for myself. But actually, as you said, you've got to have the passion,
yeah,
and you've got to have the drive and the grit and everything else that goes with it to actually want to make it work.
yeah,
It's not just a fancy yummy mummy business that you've got going.
yeah,
It's graft and caring about your fellow mum community.
yeah. And the bottom line for us, and I think probably the number one reason why franchises have failed over the past is sales, and that's
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
transcribed across all businesses. You can have this great idea, you can have these wonderful, and particularly, it worries me with the youth of today. How old am I? That they all want to be influencers and they all want to be on social media
Yeah.
or YouTubers or whatever.
Yeah.
But actually, it is the graft. You can't just go online and have a nice time. It's sales, whichever way you look at it. Whether or not
Yeah.
you're looking for sponsors or you're looking for people who are going to pay for you to put out content for them. If you can't sell, you haven't got
Yeah.
a business. And it was the same with
Yeah.
Mumbler. We can do the nice social media side, but we can post all the lovely pictures of us having a day out with our kids. But if we haven't got somebody who's willing to pay for that, and because
Yeah.
I think because of the model that we chose to go down, I never wanted to charge parents. It was always going to be free at the point of use for the people who needed it.
Yeah.
It had to be the businesses that were paying. But yeah, I think that can cross against any business. You've got to know who your
Mm.
customer is and be able to sell to them.
Yeah.
Um,
I was having exactly this conversation with a few people recently about how selling, especially, well, I was going to say when you get to our age, but that sounds ridiculous. But when you're in an environment that you really understand and and you have been in it for a long time, and I don't necessarily mean business, I mean in your franchisees boat, it's being a parent.
mm,
So they are a parent and they understand what other parents are looking for. So for
yeah,
them to sit in front of a local business and say, God, it's a freaking nightmare trying to get the pram in the door of and they start reeling off the anecdotes of someone who is in the position of stuff that's going to buy something from that business that they're
yeah,
talking to. It's
yeah,
not a fancy sales deck presentation. It's a sit down and a coffee and a relatable
yeah,
conversation. And once you've had those first couple of minutes of a conversation, it's a conversation and you've already sold. Like, it's
yeah,
not a sales pitch because
yeah,
you understand it. Like, for our freelancers who have been freelancing for 9-10 years, they'll drop in some anecdotes just about a certain type of campaign they've run, and
yeah,
already the person is like, oh God, someone understands not just
yeah,
SEO, but they understand me and my business and how I'm going to make more sales.
yeah.
It's exactly the same for your mums and parents who are running Mumbler franchises.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's so true. It's all those old cliches, and the reason why they're cliches is because they're true. But people buy from people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the truth. But without that sales, however it comes, however it works, you don't have a business.
Yeah.
And I can't really think of any businesses where that wouldn't be the case. It's different for different businesses, but that is the fundamental case. And it's funny because had you asked me when I first started Mumbler, never would have thought I'd be in digital sales ultimately.
Yeah, exactly.
I was
Yeah.
in property. I was
Yeah.
in surveying houses.
With lots of fancy letters after your name.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fancy letters.
But I think just as like one of the final things, to go back to what you were saying about that kind of almost going in full circle or reverse away from this shiny AI and back to ground zero and seeing people in person.
Mm-hmm.
We see this so much in general across digital at the moment because it's almost like buyer fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people are just tired of
Yeah,
being sold to on Facebook, being sold to on Instagram, being sold to with shiny, amazing, put together content
yeah,
pieces. And that's why things like TikTok are doing so well, from humans talking to other humans.
more
And
authentic. Yeah,
exactly, the authenticity of that is, and authenticity is like the buzzword of 2025 in digital,
mm-hmm.
because it's what resonates really well. And
Yeah,
people are just like, oh, sick of seeing all the shiny stuff. I want to buy from someone who knows me, knows my problems, and I relate to.
mm-hmm.
Simple as. And I think that's like the biggest USP that you'll never ever lose with
Yeah.
Mumbler.
Yeah, and I
Because
think
we
we've got to
literally,
always continue to keep that at the very forefront of our minds. That is a superpower for us. It's that local knowledge, and sometimes I think, I don't know if I personally think this is quite a female trait, and I try not to let myself do it. But it's that, oh, do people really want to see my face again? Do people really want to hear my content? Well, To be honest, if I look at the analytics, yeah, they do. Because
Yeah.
if it's a piece of content that with mine or one of my other franchises face, it will always do better than even the most well put together graphic, you know. And even if we're talking off the cuff and, you know, that it's not very slick and there's some ums and ahs, and particularly for me, if I'm doing a bit of social media and on the dog walk, and inevitably she'll choose to go to the toilet just at the wrong button.
Yeah.
But they're the ones that people engage with. They're the ones that people
Yeah.
like. They want to see that it's a human behind it, and, you know.
Yeah.
Just got to get rid of that imposter syndrome and just get out there and actually do it.
Yeah. Well, do you know, that's the whole crux of A, this entire conversation, and B, the whole podcast, and B, C, business in general, is just get on with it.
Yeah.
You know,
I think you're absolutely right.
And just push it, because one of my friends who's a business owner as well said, you know, done is better than perfect. And she said that to me 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, and it is like etched into my eyelids now.
Yeah.
And
just get it done.
do you find that, would you say that was like a driver for you at the start, or is it more so now? Or
I think it's continual, and I think it always will be. You can and particularly given. So one of the actual things that we talked about a little while ago is about knowing your personality and knowing, you know, what your strengths and weaknesses are. In the very early days of taking on franchisee and with myself, I did one of those personality tests, which I found incredibly useful to help. Yeah, it's one of these things I've not gone back to. But funnily enough, I did it once. It's 16 personalities online, a free one. And then about 3 years later, I did it again. Because I thought, you know, well, am I the same? And actually, I am the same, but was more extreme.
Right.
But I couldn't even tell you what I am. But that I found quite useful to just see, you know, visually where my natural skills and natural weaknesses are. But then I think you're right, it's just doing it. In knowing my personality, I can procrastinate, I can put it off. If I've got a difficult call to make, I'll be like, oh, I'll plan it for next Tuesday or whatever.
Yeah.
Just do it. You always feel better when you've done it. Just get it. It's that, this is how my brain works. I can't tell you who said it, but it's that swallowing the frog business, isn't it? Just get the worst thing done first.
Eat your frog first thing.
Yeah. And then also another one, so just get it done, get the worst thing done, and you can enjoy the rest of the day. I like lists. I am still quite old school. I need a pen and paper on my actual desk. And it's even things, so if on a day, I might have achieved a couple before I start my list, I'll still write them on so I can write them off. So I need that visual representation of what I've achieved in the day. And particularly if I know it's going to be a day where I'm going to get pulled in multiple directions, it helps bring me back on track. And even if I don't necessarily get it done, I'm not one of these ones who'll kill myself to get it done. If it's something that can wait till the next day, but then I've got the start of my next day's list, you know, to finish those off, and I need that start and finish. But then also have this kind of, it must have been somebody else's podcast that I listened to, this may as well theory of, if I'm doing this thing, I may as well make it better. I may as well just, you know, it's not that much more effort to just get this additional thing done. I can't think of a business context to put it in, but for me, every day that I do this is when I'm flossing my teeth. So I was terrible at flossing my teeth. I was brushing my teeth every day, always good at brushing. And now it's like, may as well floss.
May as well.
May as well.
I like that though, because there's always that, you know, there's that sense, again, I can't remember who said it. I think millions of people have said it, is you never know that the next bit of content you do might be the piece of content that goes off, or it might be the next LinkedIn message you send might be the one that picks you up and gives you your first freelance client or your first business who signs up for Mumbler. And but you won't know that unless you do it.
Just get it done.
Nice. So many themes here, if we're going to summarize it all, but I think some of the really important ones, especially if we tie it right back to the mums who we're trying to target right now, who are maybe in that position you were however many years ago and needing to switch up where they're at. Remove the overwhelm by dialing it back. And looking at the small next steps, like what is it monetary wise, what is it hours in the day wise, what are those little first things that you want to get back on balance.
And particularly if you've got kids, it's also looking at what childcare opportunities you've got, because it is hard, you know, running a business when you've got small children. It's not impossible, but it's, you know, it's hard, it's a challenge.
Well, I can imagine. I can't relate, but I can imagine. Although I'm married to Dave, so that's so I guess looking at all of those balance, all of those things that impact your life as a mum. What is it that you want on balance? And for you, was, I guess, an element, was it to be present.
Yeah, without a doubt. Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
I'm not one of these incredibly maternal people who wanted to homeschool and breastfeed until my kids were 5. That was not me. But having had a child in nursery, and I was really happy with the nursery when I went back to work initially, I was missing out on stuff. It's all
Yeah.
those first steps, those first words, and ultimately paying somebody else a lot of money for the privilege of looking after your kid. And don't get me wrong, like, I appreciate this is what a lot of people have to do. And a lot of people are very lucky that they've got grandparents or wider family members who might, dive in and help out. That wasn't, don't get me wrong, I had really good ad hoc childcare, but it was not a regular childcare opportunity for me.
Yeah.
So it's seeing what options are out there, because it's incredibly different, and that without doubt shapes the available time that you've got, what you're willing to do. And when we moved up to Harrogate, I didn't have a suitable childcare option. Maybe if I'd have had an amazing nursery that I could have gone to that was affordable, things would have been very different. So actually, now when I reflect back, I'm glad there wasn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're paying somebody else to do the most important job. And I do fundamentally believe that. And as somebody who's not massively maternal, it's weird, because obviously our businesses are very important, our roles are very important, but bringing up the next generation and making sure that we're doing a good job at that. And a lot of people don't get it right, and that's not saying like mum of the year or anything. I don't think I am, but being around in those early years to teach your kids the fundamentals, and do your best. And I appreciate I was lucky to be in that position.
Yeah. Well, you produce them for a reason,
Yeah,
that's to be their mum and
But
be
then
around. So.
the funny thing is, even when I was off with both kids, bringing up my business, I still then ended up, fortunately, once Mumbler was making some decent money, when my youngest daughter was about 18 months old, because she was an absolute nightmare. I mean, love her to pieces, she's gorgeous. But only on my second child did I realise that my first one was really easy. As a toddler, my youngest daughter was an absolute nightmare. So fortunately, I did find a really good childminder who I employed 2 days a week. And it was twofold. Number one, to give me a break, because love her, brilliant, but it was relentless. And then trying to run a business in that, but it was to give me the time to focus, 2 days a week, where I could actually focus on running the business, rather than trying to stop a toddler killing herself pretty much all day, every day, in the loudest possible way.
But, well, I'm sure there are multitudes of mums who can relate to that as well, because I think, even as someone who isn't a mum, I recognise the fact that you need a mental and physical break from that, because that is always on.
Yeah, which you absolutely just do not get. It's, when you think back, it's relentless in terms of hours. There's no end to the day. You're up through the night. You're the entertainment, the chef, the first aid, the night feeds, the taxi. Oh God, all of the things, and there's no
The
one.
agony aunt. Yeah.
Really rewarding job, Ginny. Definitely recommend having kids.
That ship has firmly sailed, don't worry, Sal.
Me too. I remember people coming to me and saying, "Are you going to go again?" Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely
No way. Cool. So I guess dial it back and work out what it is that you want. Is it that balance? Is it the cash? Is it both? It can be anything, but just understanding what that is in the very first instance is fundamental to making any next steps. I think adding to the local element is huge. Like, if you want to go and work for yourself, it doesn't have to be this massive glorified product invention. It can be looking at your surroundings. What am I finding really tricky, and what would really help me? I think that ethos that you said about how it can't just be me who needs this it's probably inadvertently why so many businesses are set up in the first place.
And there is, now down the line, there's plenty of fancy words for that. People always say, if you go on these courses, it's your gap analysis and stuff. We all do it naturally. I didn't know what gap analysis was when I started. It was just that case of, if I'm doing this, I'm sure everyone else must be doing this too. So
and also, I think, like, what you've said that's really refreshing as well is you don't have to be I think there's a stigma around needing to have a high risk mindset to do well in business. And actually, I think from speaking to you don't have to be that mental entrepreneur.
No.
You can take it steady away. And just, it's about, if you're going to do it that way, it's about doing what you've done, and just every time a seed of opportunities or a light bulb moments happen, it's like, oh, Okay, so because am I right in thinking the second you open that Facebook group, you never envisage someone going, "Oh, I wouldn't mind paying you to
No, no, it was
partner."
entirely organic, step by step. It was not a business to start with. It was just
Yeah,
felt like the right thing to do at the right time. And then when the opportunity came to monetize it, which coincided with me, looking for another income stream, it was like you say, taking those opportunities as they come. And when I reflect back, really, I mean, don't get me wrong, maybe the serious rich out there are the ones who are, serious risk takers. But again, super rich is never my goal. Earning a living from it and hopefully doing well out of it, is my goal. But as I reflect back, my parents were self-employed in Harrogate, and they had a manufacturing business. And when I think about it consciously, I know they had opportunities to expand, and they chose not to. They deliberately chose to stay as a small local business and earn them a good living. They retired off it, and they retired well off it. So I think I've just known that's always an option. It doesn't have to be growth at any cost.
yeah,
And that's not to say I won't change my views. Who knows? I do think being open to
yeah,
things and learning and changing. But it shouldn't, in my mind, it's not growth at any cost. It's growth
yeah.
at the right time, with the right frame of mind, and potentially with the right investors or the right money behind you.
I think that's such a good kind of poignant point to put in there as well. Is that again, there's these stigmas around if you're going to set up a business and the end goal is to make it £1 billion and sell out and sail away on Sunseeker, but you can still do really bloody well
Yeah,
and retire. Like your parents is like living the dream style. That,
yeah,
and I think as we get older as well, that kind of scenario is like the perfect setup.
yeah,
Like getting that balance of doing really well, but without the horrendous kind of pressure that comes with that next level of growth. Some people love that and thrive
yeah,
for that, and that's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
But actually, growth doesn't have to mean killing yourself because of the pressure. It
yeah.
can be enjoyable, and it's the process and all of that stuff. So, do you think, on reflection, that you've kind of been present enough in the process? Have you enjoyed the process?
Oh, definitely,
Have you?
absolutely. And I
That's
feel
good.
like I'm very lucky in that respect.
Yeah.
Um, but no, everything that's happened with the business, yeah, I would say I have. It's been thoughtful. Yeah,
Nice. That's good because I think so many people get attached to the end goal. I
mm,
did. I 100% did, and the last year or two of me has been unpicking that and trying to get back into the process as
yeah,
opposed to like end goal. And if you don't enjoy, because all of a sudden 4 or 5 years goes, it's like, did I enjoy that, or was that actually a bit crap?
yeah,
Or like, what bits did I enjoy?
yeah,
And the nice thing about being in our positions as female on our own managing these things is you change the process.
yeah,
If you don't like a bit of the process, just change it.
yeah,
Like you don't have to do it a certain way, but I think embracing the everyday of it and having the freedom to do that is such a huge thing.
yeah. And in some ways, it's because I think I was naive in business. I'd never run a business before. I was a civil
Yeah.
servant. I didn't know how you're supposed to do things, and that was really quite
Yeah.
freeing because I just made it up as I
Yeah.
went along. And like you say, if something
Yeah.
didn't work, you change it.
Yeah.
I've created a really nice office environment. I have Katie in
Yeah.
3 days a week with me that you mentioned before, and we get on really well. It's like working with my best mate. We have a right
Yeah.
laugh.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes I'm
Yeah.
glad that people can't hear what we get up to in the office because we're both our mouth. I think we spent so many years not swearing in front of our children that we're just now actual potty mouth in the Mumbler office.
You could basically retire on the Mumbler swear jar.
Yeah, basically.
Nice. Cool. Okay, so if we were to like summarize, give practical steps for mums. So we said about dialing back, working out what it is that you want or need,
Hmm.
um, not getting overwhelmed by scope. Doesn't have to be huge. Look at what's around you, what needs fixing, what do you like, what do you not like. What else would you say as someone? In fact, let's cover in two bases because I think there's two really important audiences that would appreciate that. So the first one is the mums who are wanting to
Hmm.
pivot, and the second one is it could be women, it could be anyone who are in that stage of business whereby they're through the test and learn and they're into maturity and maintenance. Because I
Yeah.
think that's almost harder. I don't know how you feel, but at the moment, I'm kind of just getting into that zone of it. And that's where my I start to miss the shiny object syndrome and the boring stuff
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
So how do you maintain that enjoyment?
Yeah. So I think probably through maintaining your own enjoyment is in introspection about what you enjoy doing on the daily, where your own skill set is. Because as you're growing as a business, as I mentioned before, you've got that freedom to employ other people to the jobs that you hate. You can, for me, it's getting stuck into the books, doing the invoicing. I hate stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's shedding those hats where you can. I think going back to doing it consciously, it's knowing that as you expand, you won't necessarily get to do those shiny day-to-day bits. But again, I think I'm quite fortunate with Mumbler because the business was about young children and babies to start with, which I was so into because that's where I was in my lifestyle. Whereas naturally, as my own children have grown up, I don't think I would be that passionate about it anyway because I'm not in it myself. So it made natural sense for me to get on a bigger team with people who are fully submerged in that in the industry, in that section of life,
In the toddler industry,
in the baby business.
toddler
Because
MDs.
on a practical level, it'd look weird if I turned up to a baby group now, just me or with my 16-year-old, who obviously wouldn't want anything to do with me. So I think it's important. And I think it does happen naturally. When I think back to when I first started, the thought of somebody else coming and doing all this stuff would freak me out. Whereas now, I'm more than happy to. It feels so right to let other people in. So I think that does happen fairly naturally. But then it's also that looking for outside expertise. I think, obviously we touched on this before, but if you're in a position now where you feel, comfortable, it's been tested, I know my business is right. So we've naturally got that confidence, what's the minimum viable product has been proven. That's it, we're there.
Yeah.
It's that going out and seeing what's out there. Because again, you don't know until you don't know. So I am an advocate of networking, but it's got to be right.
Yes.
I've been to some which have been horrific, but you always learn something, or you always meet somebody, or you always chat to somebody. But again, there's costs involved and time involved, so you've got to be really careful about which ones you go to. But there's so much funding out there, there's so much expertise out there, a lot of it for free, but you've just got to spend a bit of time researching it or hanging out with other people who know about it, because people are always happy to share knowledge. So it's that putting yourself out there to get that information, what's out there, going along, being taught what you don't know, maybe being open to new opportunities, whether it's funding or business growth or something like that. And then back to your first point on mums pivoting, I think the bottom line is just, it's scary. No one knows what they're doing. That's another thing. I think that fundamental knowledge that nobody knows what they're doing. It doesn't matter whether or not you're a first-time mum or you're the CEO of an international corporation. Like, we're all winging it.
Yeah, it's so true.
And just when you sort of know that front and centre, everyone's winging it. You feel a lot more comfortable just having a go yourself. And again, I think it is quite a female trait to be like not wanting to put yourself out there until you're perfect. Yeah. Men are a lot better at being like, do you know what, I'm good enough, so I'm going to tell people I'm good enough and get it done. We need to be a little bit more like that, as a gender, and just biting the bullet and going for it. I think that's the thing.
Yeah, love it. No, I really like that. And I think COVID and video calls and stuff has helped humanize people a bit more as well. Like before COVID, I'd be thinking, oh my God, I'm about to go meet like the CMO of a big corporation. And then when it's the CMO and they're sat in the living room and the dog's barking at an Amazon man, you kind of go, oh my God, they're just me, but they're called the CMO and they've made mistakes. So as soon as you humanize people in that kind of way, it just makes everything a lot less terrifying, doesn't it?
Yeah,
I think.
Absolutely.
Nice. Excellent. Well, I think that's a very nice and natural place to end. So thank you for all of that. I think it's really resonates with a lot of mums out there because it sounds, making that decision in the first place is terrifying. And I think committing to that decision, terrifying in the first place, but you've obviously testament to being able to do that. So thank you very much for joining the Action Effect. And I will put all of your details in the bio underneath if anyone wants to reach out and contact you and hear more about Mumbler. But yeah, thanks for joining me, Sally. It's been amazing.
Thanks, Ginny. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you.
No worries. Thank you.